serial killer case in the history of the United States. Most homicide cases might have upwards of 200 pieces of evidence, but in this case, we're looking at about almost 10,000 items of evidence. It's unprecedented.
This is the story of America's longest-running and most prolific series of murders. For over 2 decades, the citizens of Seattle quaked under the shadow of the Green River Killer.
What you need to know about the Green River Man.
A murderer so prolific that by the time he was caught, over 48 women had been murdered, left to rot in the woods of Washington State. The thriving city of Seattle, hub of the tech industry and the coffee capital of the world. But 25 years ago, it was the setting for a series of deadly murders.
There was a dark cloud over this community for a long, long time.
August 15, 1982, a day young Detective Dave Reichart of King County Police would never forget.
This rafter had drifted down the river, so as he's drifting down the river, he sees what he thinks are 2 mannequins that are placed up against the bank of the river. And it looks like they have a couple of rocks placed on top of them to hold them. As the rafter gets closer, he sees that these are not mannequins. They're human. Of course, they've been there a while and they're dead.
Well, I was a brand new patrol officer. I'd been on the street about 30 days, and one of the calls I responded to was the girls in the Green River.
Officer Sue Peters saw police forensics pull the bodies of Marcia Chapman, Cynthia Hines, and Opal Mills from the riverside.
Just being at the riverbank, seeing the victims' bodies in the water, it was, shocking and upsetting, that someone came to their death in that manner.
The killer had both strangled and had sex with all 3 victims. The police made a connection. A month before, 2 other women, Wendy Caulfield and Deborah Bonner, had been strangled and dumped on the banks of the Green River. King County Police had a serial killer on their hands, and the list of young women going missing was growing by the day. Detective Reichart had to move quickly. Very soon, he found a connection between all 5 murdered women.
What we've discovered is that for whatever reason, these young girls were leaving home, forced from home, out onto the street. And they became involved in the world of prostitution.
Off the Pacific Highway en route to Seattle Airport lies the notorious SeaTac Strip, still the most lucrative area for prostitution. In the 80s, this was known as the hunting ground of the Green River Killer, and it was where the police began their investigations.
Have you heard about a guy out here raping and hurting some of the girls? I'm sure there is.
The secret lifestyles of the prostitutes and their reluctance to report violence against them to the police made them the perfect victims.
Your job is to get in a car quickly and disappear into the night and do what you're paid to do. And then, if you're lucky enough, you can come back and do it again more than once that night and make additional money. But if you're not...
Where's the money?
It's here.
And you run into Ridgeway, you end up dead and you don't come back.
Many more girls would take this risk, and many more would fall victim to the Green River Killer.
Get off the street. There's a killer on the loose. You're putting your life in danger. One of the young girls on the street, with confidence, she said, "Not going to get me. I'm too smart." I'll be able to tell. I always ask, "Are you the Green River Killer?" And 2 weeks later, I was picking up her body.
Some of the girls that disappeared from the highway, it was hard to actually figure out what day they disappeared or what time.
A lot of these witnesses were alcoholics or drug addicts themselves. So to try to get them to remember, were they next to Deborah Bonner or Marcia Chapman or Opal Mills or any of the victims was almost impossible to do.
All 5 of the victims so far had been dumped in or around water. But in September '82, the Green River Killer changed his pattern. He started dumping bodies in urban waste ground instead.
Even though this site is some 5.5 miles away from the Green River, police do believe that this latest victim is related to the Green River case.
Giselle Lavorne's strangled body was discovered close to the SeaTac Strip. She was found in an abandoned lot under the flight path of Seattle Airport, and just like the others, no one had heard her scream. No one had seen her murdered. A few months later, Linda Rule's scattered bones turned up in a Seattle building site.
The majority of the remains were discovered by accident. A caretaker at a baseball park, children playing. A couple bikers were out with their dirt bikes.
Forensic anthropologist Bill Haglund and his team were given the challenge of identifying the bodies at the new dump sites.
That challenge is exaggerated when bodies are dumped at convenient pull-off places, where young people like to drink and throw their excess beer cans, where people take their garbage and dump it, or they're cleaning out the garage and just dump it alongside the road. You find bodies dumped in this context, in this environment, of a lot of extraneous material. What's evidence and what's not?
There appears to be some garbage in the immediate area, possibly on top of the body. It's so difficult to tell.
It became a real challenge for the crime lab, because at one point they may end up with 10,000 pieces of evidence from this case. And just storing that and preserving it and actually packaging it and being able to follow it and track it and know where it is becomes quite a feat.
Time spent sifting through garbage hindered the investigation. With 7 girls murdered and more going missing on a daily basis, pressure was mounting on King County Police.